Welcome to KNBR 680 AM Franchise Nation Sports Radio. I am your host, Andre Weingarten, and this is Third and Long, sports talk show where we discuss everything football, focusing mainly on our own local San Francisco 49ers. They had a crazy off-season, and the preseason is upon us. We will have Nate from Lombard Street coming on in a little bit, but throughout the entirety, or at least a good portion of this show, there will be reaction via Twitter on your screen for those watching on television. For those on the radio, you can sit back, relax, and listen to me, and we can go from there. Actually, it seems that Nate is on the line right now. He's a little bit early, but that is all right. We'll get Nate from Lombard Street, a friend of the show, in for now, and then I will be back to talk about the offseason from there. So, Nate, welcome back. What do you think about this year's offseason for the 49ers?
You take a look at what the 49ers did this offseason. Dare I say they had the best draft and offseason of any team in the league? Andre, I know you played in the league 47 years back in 1912, and I know you was the best quarterback player in the league since Doug Flutie. So y'all know how they run this team up there. One of the guys I want to talk about coming out of this draft, and I think it was a big pickup, is my man, Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold, man, y'all remember the cartoon that was on TV in the early 2000s? Like, if you grew up in the early 2000s like I did, Hey Arnold, man, football head. It's perfect for the 49ers. I think Arnold is basically Julian Edelman 2.0. He runs short routes. He's a short human being. He catches balls. He scores touchdowns, and he's white. Let's face it. There are 4 key elements keeping this guy from actually being Julian Edelman. 1, his first name is not Julian. 2, his last name isn't Edelman. Number 3, he doesn't play for the Patriots. And number 4, he doesn't wear number 11. Other than that, he's pretty much Julian Edelman. Now, another thing I wanted to take a look at was, admittedly so, I was a bit surprised at the cutting ties of Corey Lemonnier, because I believe that everybody knows the old saying, when life hands you lemons, you make Lemonnier. So, I think it was a little surprising. I thought Lemonnier had a good 2016 campaign, good enough to stay on the team, but again, I trust the 49ers that they know what they're doing there. And the last thing I want to touch on is, man, Eric Reed, what a creative and nifty little move to put him at inside linebacker. I think that could really help out because it opens up a spot in the defensive backfield deeper for a guy that can play a little bit of coverage perhaps than Eric Reed. 2 guys I might take a look at for that role. The first one is going to be a little more expensive, but maybe you go get a guy like a Deon Buchanan from Arizona. Again, I know you were trying to move the Redskins pick at the draft. So maybe you trade that to get a guy like a Deon Buchanan, the pick and, some change for Deon Buchanan to get a good coverage safety there. But another guy I would like to really hope the 49ers examine real close would be Deon Bailey from the Jets. I think Deon Bailey is an underrated safety. He's great in coverage. He moves well. I think he can defend the deep ball better than anyone gives him credit for. So I think if you end up having to pay too much to get a guy maybe like a Deon Buchanan and you felt the need to, I think you could go out and get Deon Bailey from the Jets for a really cheap rate, and I think it would be a great move for the team considering that, the safety positions opened up and the Jets and the 49ers obviously have done business before. Colin Kaepernick. So them's is my 3 points, Andre. It's always good to catch up with you, brother man. We'll have to catch up sometime, maybe grab a beer or something. You gotta be kidding me again. Mom, I am on the radio! We went over this earlier! So yeah, we'll have to catch up, grab a beer sometime. 49er Nation, hashtag Franchise Nation, go Niners.
Absolutely, Nate. And I do know that you're in the process of planning on moving, so when you actually do get that going, let me know and I'll help you out a little bit with it. But thank you for calling in. That was Nate from Lombard Street, friend of the show. Always interesting take, always has some good humor in it, one of the funnier people that I know. So it was great having him aboard. But now let's get into the offseason. Actually, I'll address a few of the points that he made, and then we'll talk about pretty much everybody. A lot of people don't know about the backstories of some of these guys in the draft, so I'm going to try to cover everybody, and we can kind of break down how things go throughout the course of the preseason and see what the moves are made and all of that. So let's get into it. While the 49ers made a lot of moves in the offseason regarding filling needs in different places, like signing Malcolm Jenkins, signing defensive end Mike Daniels, getting him away from the Green Bay Packers, etc., a lot of the signings made were for depth purposes and for preparing for the preseason. Taking a look at some of the guys who were brought in, there was Amir Abdullah, Duke Johnson Jr., Jeff Janis. Going from there were some other players brought in, like Fred Ellison, some offensive linemen. TJ Clemmings was brought in at the right tackle position, probably to be the full-time starter there. And then there were some other players being brought in, and it was just an overall attempt to figure out who would be the best candidates to make the roster and round out the team as a whole. Walter Thurman was added as a safety, potentially, and that's pretty much everybody worth mentioning. Now, some of the players that they had to cut ties with include Eli Harold and Corey Lemonier, both of which they traded away because their stocks were high, but they didn't have much of a position on the team. Lemonier came off of a 9.5 sack season, but he didn't exactly fit the future of the team. Being a hybrid scheme, he would be in coverage a bit more, and he really just is not capable of it. They need someone who can play both and effectively, and while he got a lot of sacks, his pass rushing skills weren't exactly at a premium. He's young and he has a lot of potential, so dealing him for a third-round pick most likely provided the best opportunity for the 49ers to move on past him and try to address outside linebacker in the draft. Or, well, they already did address it in the draft when they traded him, but Eli Harold is somebody who they dealt as well for the same purposes. He didn't have much of a spot on the team, and he actually wasn't even playing much. He was a very good special teamer for the unit, but overall he lacked the presence to be a starter, and he was not better than Corey Lemonier or Aaron Lynch, who were the two starting outside linebackers. He was tested at inside linebacker, he was tested all around the field, but K'Ari Ford beat him out for that starting job last season, and he just never really found a place to get on the field outside of special teams. So moving on from both of them, despite both being young, seemed like the best position because they really didn't have a lot of usage to them, but they did have their upside and had usage elsewhere. So trading them for draft picks for guys who could help the team more immediately seemed like the best idea, especially for a unit that is building up and has a window that they clearly can tell before they have to pay some of these young stars. Now that we've taken a look at the free agent signings for the team, we're going to discuss some of the draft picks made, we'll go into their backstories, and go from there. First and foremost, we have the first pick in the draft by the organization, strong safety Jamal McNeil out of Wisconsin. McNeil is a rare breed indeed, as he is the first Heisman-winning defensive player, full-time defensive player, which is even more rare, since Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson all the way back in 1998. Charles Woodson, one of the best all-time. McNeil, a great playmaker, made a lot of tremendous plays throughout the season, did a lot both in coverage and in the box. He absolutely earned the right of being named the Heisman Trophy winner, and drafting him at number 11 might be the steal of the draft, as he really can do pretty much anything for the team. Next up at pick number 20 is Jawan Carey, inside linebacker from LSU. Jawan Carey is somebody who they kind of fell in love with. They really weren't looking for an inside linebacker, but with Navarro Bowman around and with Eric Reed being moved into inside linebacker, adding another linebacker seemed like a good idea. While K'Ari Ford was good enough, the 49ers didn't really feel like waiting on good enough. So they decided to go with their second first-round pick and go with Jawan Carey, who really showed a lot of capabilities as someone who could actually take over from Navarro Bowman once the team wants to move on from him. Bowman is 29 years old. He is one of the best run-stopping players in the NFL. He had 29 tackles for a loss last season, which led the league by almost 10, which is just incredible. He was always in the backfield, always figuring out how to get into space, pursuing his players, but he was terrible in coverage. Without having that coverage inside linebacker, which Eric Reid hopes to fill the role of, they really kind of struggled. Patrick Willis always filled that role for the 49ers with Navarro Bowman there, and you kind of look at it and say, well, is Navarro Bowman going to be a guy who's going to be a full-time player? And at this point in his career, the answer is kind of no. He's not fast enough to pursue some of these guys, the running backs in coverage, and it seems like his role is probably best as a two-down linebacker, someone similar to what Brandon Spikes has done for a lot of his career. Someone who can just get in, be a run stopper, play on those most likely running downs, and kind of be off the field for those coverage situations because he really is a detriment. And Juwan Carey, who is raw, showed a lot of potential, very good technique in coverage during his time at LSU. He was someone who excelled in man coverage. His zone reading ability was not exactly fantastic, but he's definitely somebody who you look at and say, well, this guy has a lot of potential. Let's see what he can do. And his ability inside the box against the run was so good that they had to go with him at number 20. And it kind of creates a little bit of a catch-22 situation in the 3-4 hybrid, because it is a hybrid scheme. When they're in the 3-4, it's quite clear that he's going to be on the field when Navarro Bowman is not. But it seems like Eric Reid can be that coverage linebacker as well. While you can't really say that Carey is a great coverage linebacker, he's better than Bowman, so it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works. Now, at the 5th pick in the 2nd round, the 49ers traded up to go after JT Ogletree. Now, Ogletree is a corner out of Nebraska, and he came on just incredibly in his senior season. He was never really fantastic in coverage. He was never really a great player at Nebraska, but coming into his senior season, the expectation was he'd be somebody who would be a mid to late round pick. And JT Ogletree went off this season. He was the best, or among the best corners in the nation, allowing only 30% catch rate in his coverage. He was targeted 80 times on the season, so they went after him a lot. Only 30% catch rate and allowed 0 touchdowns. That's a combination of man and zone. JT Ogletree was spectacular at Nebraska. Everything changed for him. It seemed like a new coach there was all he needed, and boy, was it spectacular. He transformed himself into one of the best corners in the nation, and the 49ers hope that he can keep that up. He took that step going into his age 23 year, and it seems like he will be only improving from there. Next up, they have outside linebacker Dallas Austin. Dallas Austin, aka the Texas Wrangler outside linebacker from USC, was taken with the 11th pick in the 2nd round. And Austin was somebody who the team felt was good enough in coverage. Obviously, he's not good in coverage as an outside linebacker. He is a true pass rusher, someone who was great off the edge, provided excellent speed, and really provided an element to the team that was kind of lacking from someone like Corey Lemonnier. Lemonnier was good, but he wasn't great, and they felt that Dallas Austin was someone who they could go after and be an adequate replacement for him. And it was true. He is somebody whose technique is a lot better as a pure pass rusher. Lemonnier was a little bit more raw in that regard. And Dallas Austin really is a natural pass rusher, but I think the thing that stands out for him is that he's able to be really good in run defense as well. His ability in pursuit is top-notch for a rookie. Really excellent player coming out of college. And he probably would have gone higher if it wasn't for just an incredible premium of talent at the top of the draft at outside linebacker. There really was just so much talent in the first couple rounds that the 49ers really felt the need to trade up. Now, the back few rounds, probably the back 5 rounds, starting at around the middle of the third round, was one of the thinnest drafts you'll see in a long time. But there was a lot of really good players early on, so the 49ers made it a point of emphasis to trade up to avoid taking a lot of duds, because it felt like this team needed to take a huge step, and Joe Montana and company was willing to make the effort to take said step. And Dallas Austin was somebody at outside linebacker who can be paired with Aaron Lynch, who can be moved around a little bit. He can play inside if need be. And it's somebody who they felt was worthwhile bringing him on. Now, this next pick is probably their pick of the draft. While Jamal McNeil is the best player on this team from this draft, Chris Arnold, wide receiver out of Texas Southern, taken with the first pick in the third round, is probably going to be the most anticipated draft pick of this entire draft. He's someone who set tons of records at Texas Southern, but the knock on him was that he was only 5'8". He was the fastest player in the draft, but people questioned his toughness going over the middle against NFL players. And it seemed like he was someone who needed to refine his route running a little bit. And a lot of people really questioned whether he would be a good enough NFL player. Well, through tons of workouts, through his pro day, Chris Arnold really shined. And the 49ers took a shot on the 5'8" white wide receiver with the best 40 time in this year's draft out of Texas Southern. And since he's been in camp, he has been a standout. He has been as good as Nate Hill or Charles Johnson this season, two guys who were excellent last year. His route running is still a little bit rough around the edges, but he catches passes in traffic. He makes plays that you just look at and say, wow, he's 5'8", you think he's 6'2". It's just absolutely incredible how good he is and how pro-ready he is coming out of a program like Texas Southern. People just did not expect it to be that easy of a transition, if ever, and he has been probably the steal of the draft. Now, speaking of a steal of the draft, you have defensive tackle Sedale Hunt coming out of Michigan. Sedale Hunt suffered a terrible ankle injury at the end of his season, around a game or two before their bowl game. And Sedale Hunt did not partake in the combine. He did not partake in his pro day either, but he didn't need to. Sedale Hunt was a projected first-round pick prior to injury, maybe early second-round pick prior to injury. And he fell to a fourth-round pick because of the extent of that ankle injury. Now, a lot of people didn't think that he would be ready for training camp, and he didn't play for a lot of camp, but he did make his appearance in the preseason. He played a lot, and he really showcased ability during the preseason that really warranted his draft selection. So it's a great opportunity for the 49ers to draft Sedale Hunt. He might not be of the mold needed for a nose tackle, but he is at least someone who can play 3-4 defensive end or 4-3 DT, and because of the hybrid scheme, it seemed pretty much worth it. Not only that, he reads plays beautifully as he almost gets that interception on the screen pass. Sedale Hunt really showcased his talent during this preseason. He got to the quarterback around 4 or 5 times. He was only listed with 1.5 sacks, but he got to the quarterback a lot. He probably got 3 sacks. They just didn't reward it to him specifically because he was in on some plays. He was the first one there and caused the sacks as well. So he's really someone to keep your eye on. He actually earned the starting spot at defensive tackle over Ian Williams going forward. And Sedale Hunt, who really showcased excellent pass rushing technique throughout his entirety at Michigan, was someone who got overlooked because of injury. They were concerned that he wouldn't have the explosiveness that he did before getting injured, but as you can see, he really has been excellent. And that's also a credit to the 49ers training staff, one of the best staffs in the league. They really made sure that he would be ready to go. And, that's one of those things that you kind of look at and say, okay, this is someone who you can really trust to be a really good player. And, well, he seems to be paying, checking every box and really paying massive dividends. Next up, because we're going to go kind of quickly through the next few guys, Aaron Norwood, free safety out of Washington. Now, Norwood is not somebody that you would expect out of a safety. He's someone who came in. He was at Washington. He was an inside linebacker for a lot of his time at Washington, but he's undersized. He's not big enough to be a linebacker in the NFL, and they decided to try him out at safety. So he's really raw out there, but he's fast. He covers ground well. He's good in zone coverage. He's someone who tackles and hits really hard, and he's just an athletic freak. He's someone that you look at and say, well, you know what? This guy can really play anywhere. We'll see what he can do for us. And that's really it. He's someone who they wanted to draft. 4th round pick, 20th in that round. And boy, was he good. So he's someone who, you're going to look at and say, well, is he the best player on the team? No. But he can pursue the ball well. He's fast. He has good hands. You want him on your team. He's not extremely fast, but he's fast enough. And he's someone you want on your team. He has great jumping ability. He has great ball hawk skills. And whether he turns out to be a great player or not, he's someone that was worth taking a risk on. Next up, we have Terrence Harper, tight end of Auburn, with the 5th round selection, 20th pick of that round. And Terrence Harper is someone who really didn't have much of a draft stock. He was known as someone who was fast, but he wasn't very good. He could block, but he wasn't great at it. And he was strong, but he was never really natural at tight end. And then he went out and had a huge game against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. He had something along the lines of 7 catches for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns against Alabama. And his draft stock went from being undrafted to someone who you want to take a chance on. And the 49ers felt that he was better moving forward than someone like Blake Bell. And to take a shot on him. And, he earned his roster spot through this preseason. He grounded out. He played a lot on special teams. He got open. He made plays. He struggled at times, but he beat out Red Ellison in the end for that roster spot. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes moving forward. And last but not least, we have 6th round pick Marlon Doyle with the 20th selection of that round. He's a defensive end out of Iowa. And Marlon Doyle was someone who you looked at and said, well, this guy is pretty strong. He's throwing around people at Iowa. He has some speed to him. He's a good player, but he's not great. He has some good technique, but kind of concerning for the next level. And will he be able to throw people around at the next level? And then he came out and showcased that he was the strongest defensive end there. Put up 35 on the bench press, which was by far the most out of any defensive end. And he really showcased that, yeah, he's strong. And he's someone who you'd like to have as a rotational defensive end. So he and Jamal McNeil are 2 guys who have been taken late round picks at defensive end. And he's someone who you want to look at and say, well, let's give him a shot. And that's really it for the draft. Taking a look, by the way, to revisit what Nate from Lombard Street said before, Deion Bailey did try out with the organization way back during training camp, but he was not signed. So that's something to keep an eye on. He was not someone who they felt was better than whom they had, better than Jaquiski Tartt, better than Jimmy Ward, etc. And through the first few preseason games, the overall feel of things was that Bryce Petty easily won the starting job. Kalen Jones did not look good. Brandon Weeden didn't look really good either, but Eric Reed played so much at inside linebacker during this preseason. He was great in both run coverage, in run stopping and in pass coverage. He showcased tremendous ability, really good instincts, shooting the gap both against starters and against backups. And for this final preseason game, all the backups started. So this was really an opportunity to face off against the Chargers, who really were still figuring out their roster, giving them an opportunity to kind of test their starters. But it didn't really end up working that way because the 49ers didn't bring their starters. It was really to kind of figure out, is Kalen Jones going to be up to snuff? Is Derwin Taylor going to make the team again? Is Rashad Green? Is Jeff Janis going to make it over someone like DeAndre Smelter? Is Amir Abdullah good enough? Is Duke Johnson good enough? He's had some time with the team, hasn't been with the team in over a year, but he does he doesn't know the system very well. He does know John DeFilippo's system from his time in Cleveland, and that is the hybrid, of course, the two systems of John Harbaugh and of DeFilippo. So, he does know the system at least decently, and he's someone who, they wanted to bring back. He's someone who's a great receiving threat. He's a good kick returner, someone who could really provide a good spark for the team, and it was proven throughout this preseason that he is absolutely deserving of a roster spot. Now, some of the guys who are not going to make the roster, DeAndre Smelter did not impress throughout this preseason. It didn't work. And it's unfortunate for him, but it really was not good enough. Mike Davis didn't make it. He was cut a while ago. And Amir Abdullah is not going to make the roster. He was the, third best running back on the team, or fourth best rather, because Carlos Hyde, even though he didn't look very good in this preseason, we know what he's capable of. Obviously, Elgin Armstead, who's coming off of injury, looked very good back in his return. He looked pretty sharp. Started off a little bit slow, had a drop or two, but that's what the preseason is for. Nate Hill looked good, and one of the things that really sold the team on Jeff Janis was his blocking ability downfield. He never really quit on any play. And this was a cool little opportunity for Navarro Bowman to get into the passing game in the final preseason outing. Unfortunately, Brandon Watts, who was a standout during this preseason, got injured in the final game. He ended up with 4.5 sacks throughout the preseason, and he and Josh Wells both are going to be placed on IR to prevent them from being cut. Both guys were on future contracts, so it'll be interesting to see how they end up returning. But Bryce Petty didn't play too much. He had 36 pass attempts. He was fine. He was really testing things out, everyone getting used to the scheme. But Brandon Whedon is not going to end up making the roster, and Duke Johnson led the way with 8.3 yards per carry. He did have a big run, but he was spectacular. Carlos Hyde looked lethargic, and it's a little bit concerning for someone who really has been vocally upset with his role with the team. He really doesn't like being a guy who splits reps with Elgin Armstead, and he really didn't look like he was putting much effort forward in the preseason, so that's something to watch. He's in his contract season, so he might not be ideal to bring back. Eric Reed ended up with 31 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, and Le'Veon Duncan really put on a show in coverage as the nickel corner on the second unit, especially in run stopping. He's someone who is so good in the return game that you don't want to put him out there too often, but man, did he put on a show when he was on the field. Taking a look across the board, we're going to kind of showcase the starting lineup for the team, and we'll also go into team captains. Before actually going into the starting lineup, some players who were cut and some players who were signed. Kyle Brinza was 7 for 10 on field goals during this preseason. He looked really, really poor, and he's been cut by the team. His replacement is, they tried out a bunch of guys. They tried out John Potter. They tried out Travis Coons. They tried out Josh Lambo. But the guy who ended up winning the job was Brandon McManus. Brandon McManus, who was cut from the Denver Broncos after this season, is someone who looked really good for us in terms of his tryout, and he's someone who we're going to bring on board. Walter Thurman did not make the team. Like I said, Amir Abdullah didn't. Brandon Whedon did not make the team. Instead, the Rams, in a kind of surprise move, kind of not, they did draft a quarterback in the first round. They actually cut Nick Foles, and we're going to pick him up as our third quarterback. He's somebody who we can trust kind of more than Kalen Jones. We'll see how he adapts to the scheme. But Red Ellison was cut as well. And another player who was unexpectedly cut, who we brought on board, was A.J. Cann from the Jacksonville Jaguars. So those are two players who we brought on board, along with, of course, Brandon McManus. And we'll kind of break down the starting lineup now. At quarterback, Bryce Petty. Running back, it's split between Carlos Hyde and Elgin Armstead. Carlos Hyde is the official starter. At wide receiver, Nate Hill at left wide receiver. Charles Johnson at right wide receiver. And Chris Arnold in the slot. At tight end, Bernie Lauderdale beat out Kobe Fleener for the starting job. At left tackle, Alex Boone. Left guard, Freddie Young. Center, Wes Dorsey. right tackle, right guard, Christian Reeves, right tackle, TJ Clemmings. On the defensive side, at defensive end, Eric Armstead and Mike Daniels. At defensive tackle, it is Sadale Hunt. At outside linebacker, it is Aaron Lynch and Dallas Austin. Inside linebacker, Jawan Carey and Navarro Bowman. At cornerback, it is Dre Kirkpatrick, Darius Moats, and JT Ogletree beating out Tyler Gordon for the nickel corner spot. At free safety, Malcolm Jenkins. At strong safety, Jamal McNeil. Kicker, Brandon McManus. Punter, Marquette King. Both kick and punt returner, Le'Veon Duncan. You're looking at the schedule right now, and it's an interesting one. The team has 3 road games and then 3 home games to round things out. 3 straight divisional matchups to end the season. Is a flip to what they had last season, which was obviously they started with 3 divisional games and kind of went from there. That kind of set the mood for the season, the tone, if you will. And it's going to be interesting to see how the team can rebound and go about things this time around without having that. Now, we have 2 more things to mention. First and foremost, we have the team captains. It has been announced that Dre Kirkpatrick, Navarro Bowman, Bryce Petty, Malcolm Jenkins, and Alex Boone have been named as the 5 team captains for the San Francisco 49ers for this season. And last but not least, breaking news, the St. Louis Rams have been approved to move to Los Angeles following this season by a final vote of 26-6. They needed 2/3, which means they needed 24. They got 26, which means that the Rams will now be the Los Angeles Rams following this season. I hope you guys enjoyed the San Francisco 49ers preseason. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm doing this for my grandparents' house because of this terrible snowstorm. But I did manage to bring along my laptop, my microphone, and transferred a bunch of files. There were a few things I didn't get to add into the video, which I wanted to, like the logo, but I can live without that for now. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Moonlight Swami. And episode 1, or game 1 of the next season, season 3, will be coming to you guys on Wednesday. Peace out, Franchise Nation.